Hi, y'all. Natasha Thomas here for Black Creative Healing with episode 5. Very excited to share this collaboration with you all between myself and Dr. Hakeem Leonard. Hakeem Leonard is a member of the faculty at Shenandoah University. He actually just got promoted to associate professor, and he is a member of the Black Music Therapy Network. He and I actually served together on the steering committee of that organization. I've been very excited about having Hakeem as a collaborator in this project for some time. So in this episode, you're going to notice a little bit of a change up to the usual structure. Rather than a part 1 and a part 2, there's just so much of this process that felt like it all needed to be shared cohesively as one part. So the episode is a standalone. And there is a SoundCloud track that came out of our collaboration that we'll make sure you get a link to in the show notes and promotion of this episode. That'll be hosted over on Hakeem's SoundCloud page. But my patrons over on Patreon will get a downloadable version of the track. I'm really, really excited for y'all to hear this. Not just the piece of music that Hakeem and I put together, but the conversation that birthed it, I think, is really timely and meaningful in a time where there is so much going on. There's so much uncertainty and discomfort, and that all is worthy of honoring without needing to tie it up in a pretty little bow. So that's sort of the crux of my conversation with Hakeem Leonard, and I cannot wait for y'all to see it. All right. See you on the other side.
Yes. Background. All right.
My name is Hakeem Leonard. Some students call me doctor, but that's not my name. And I am a professor at Shenandoah University in Winchester, Virginia. I've been there 5 years now. I took a year of medical leave. I did have leukemia in remission now, thank God. And went to Florida State University for master's equivalency and for PhD studies. And in my time in Tallahassee, I also ran a business called Healing Hearts Music Therapy. Still am the co-owner of that business.
Cool.
And so, yeah, I've done a lot of work, of course, mostly through private practice, but with older adults and school settings, all kinds of folks with different abilities, early childhood, developmental, autistic persons, and, residential treatment and juvenile justice. And then some of the research was, hospital rehabilitation settings and different things like that. And so, I've done, had a very behavioral-based and medical-based training, but also in the past few years, I've learned a lot from the relationships that I have.
Yeah.
My colleagues, Dr. Toni Meadows, Baldwin Landless, Marisol Norris, those are probably more so the direct relationships that I've learned a lot through. And so, much more coming to understanding of, the self in therapy, subjectivity of clients and therapists, understanding from a cultural sensitive lens, and speaking to issues of power, privilege, equity, justice, and not only in the kind of social cultural ways, but in the musical, cultural, aesthetic ways.
Yeah.
So that's why, you see me talking about J. Cole, or you see me talking about Jamila Woods in relation to Black identity and how that reflects on the lived experience of our clients and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is
How,
really
how did we meet?
I know, I
Because
was just gonna say, I don't even think I know a point of our meeting.
I think there's this sensation with, especially like Black people in music therapy, that you just hear their name for a while.
Yeah.
And it's like, you hear it for like 2 years. And then you don't know if you're going to get to know that person, but you just know that they exist. And then,
Yes.
then later on, you just get to be friendly with them. So,
Right. And then later on, you're like, we're in the same circle now. Like, we're collaborating on stuff. And it just sort of organically happened in a way that makes me feel like we've known each other a lot longer than we literally have.
Yeah. So it probably was when we had 2017. Was it leading up to that national conference?
Maybe, because I can't even tell you. I don't even know that I remember fully how I ended up on the BMTN steering committee. So that's as nebulous as our meeting is the fact that both of us are on that committee. So yeah, but maybe that was it in the process of building up to that conference and
I think so.
Everything else. But yeah, so we met in music therapy. We just got steeped in each other's circles until all of a sudden we were sharing space.
Yes, and I think there's a good thing about it, not just that we met, but I think collectively and then interpersonally, you and I, like it seems like our ideologies and a lot of our thoughts are coming closer to each other.
Yes. Yeah, I've been like generally excited lately, but specifically in relation to the work that you're doing, just being able to know, like when I think of any sense of having a cohort of people in academia, you know, people that are doing some of the same types of things that I am, or speaking to their students about some of the same things that I am, and in the same way, you know, like not letting them off the hook.
Yeah.
You know, I think of what you're doing, and it makes me feel a little less alone.
Well, that's good. That's good. Same here.
Oh, good. I was thinking to myself while you were talking how I'm really glad. So you're the first music therapist, like, in this whole series. Yeah. So far, it's been all it's been Black creatives from other disciplines. Wow. The first guest was a social worker, a social worker who happens to dance and use movement in her practice. But what I like about the timing of this interview right now is that with those other interviews being non-therapists, largely, definitely not music therapists, it sort of allows the opportunity for people to get into just thinking about creativity in a general curious sense. Right. And now here we are able to talk about it in a real, like, evidence-based sense, you know? Right. And I hesitate even to use that term because I think it gives it sort of...
I think that term is okay. I think we need to broaden it out from what is generally talked about.
Yes.
You know, I'm writing an article right now that's talking about ethics, equity, and evidence, and how they all flow together. And you know, with Black people, you know, through a lens like critical race theory, like your lived experience is evidence, you know, so.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what I was meaning when I was like pausing on the word evidence, because I think we give it this hierarchical weight that it did not ask for.
Right.
Like the word itself is not the problem. It's what academics like to do with the word. That's the problem. Right. Because I think generally if I were to have started this series in this sort of academic headspace, I think it would have set the wrong tone, you know? Like, I feel like building to it like we are, you know, now with the placement of this interview is to say that we bring all of these things with us into academia, that we are not, like, we don't go in there and then close the door to ourselves. you know. Some people do, not me.
and some trainings, you know, they wouldn't say they do that, but I think they do it. Some people do it explicitly and some people do it implicitly.
Yeah, but it happens, I think.
Yeah.
I think there is, and has been for a long time, this wave in therapy in general of objectivity, meaning that you cut yourself off completely, you know, from anything remotely personal.
Right.
But that doesn't work.
No, it actually perpetuates oppression.
Like, it actually hurts people. Surprise.
Yeah.
Objectivity is a lie.
Right. But you know, it's worse to be like, it's worse to be like, I'm objective when you're, and while being subjective, you say I am objective, and you're damaging people and regulating people with your worldview while saying I don't have a worldview. I'm just objective.
Right. Yeah. There are moments, and I've never quite had it happen where I've actually said this to a student, but there are moments where I'll be listening to someone saying essentially that, while knowing what you just said, that like, this is, are you aware that you are making subjective statements right now?
Right.
do you don't see it?
Yeah.
And that's sort of the, like, we were talking about the Jamila Woods Legacy album. That's the Baldwin, like, that's the line in there that's like, we're over here not understanding why you haven't gotten it yet.
Right. Exactly. That's one of my favorite lines.
Yeah, I pulled up those lyrics, since we were talking about it, I pulled up those lyrics on Genius, and you know how Genius always has the, like, where this comes from type of type. Yeah. But here, I'll share my screen for a hot second. I think the Baldwin one, oh hi, it's one of those where it's not necessarily exactly things that he said.
No, it's her subjectivity.
Right.
Based on his kind of his life and his.
Yeah, because some of them she pulls direct quotes or quotes related to interviews and things, but this is one that she doesn't necessarily do that.
Right.
You know, but it's about sort of reimagining his perspective.
Yeah, I'm actually writing an article about this song too.
About this specific song too? Tell me more. Tell me what you can tell me. Maybe that's
I can tell you what I can tell you.
Yes.
So that song just hit me when it says right there, you don't know a thing about our story, tell it wrong all the time. You don't know a thing about our glory, want to steal my baby shine. Like, I really looked at that as a level of, like, you're like talking about white people in particular, like that embody whiteness. Like, you're standing in this, like we just talked about, this place of perceived objectivity and normativity.
Yes.
And trying to understand my story while being centered. Like, you can't even interpret my story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, you can't even try. Like, you wouldn't even. Yeah,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, even if you did try, you wouldn't be able to. Like, which sort of actually, where's the Muddy Waters one? Because that one, I feel like, and interestingly, it follows this one, I think. Maybe? Mm-hmm. No, it might follow Miles. But, yeah, but it's sort of, the idea is in that song.
Yeah.
And that one's based off an interview, apparently. Like, he said something in response. There it is. Do you think they could ever play the blues like you? And Muddy laughed. Like me? Like,
yeah.
Are you serious? Mm-hmm. Or it makes me think of how Prince would say, anyone who plays me plays themselves.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, yeah, you can sure try.
Mm-hmm. And then that other line, going back to Baldwin.
Yeah, let's go there.
Next line, it says, what does it say? Oh, you don't know a thing about our glory, want to steal my shine. You know, it's like, you know, whiteness tries to have it both ways. It's like
Ah,
you want to objectify us, but then when we show you some subjectivity that is so creative and so meaningful, then you want to appropriate it or
of
see how you
course.
can commodify it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's maddening because the cycle that happens then is first the thing gets like derided as being beneath them.
Right.
Then they start to see it become desirable. Then they want it. Then they take it. Then they perpetuate it all over the place, mutate it, turn it into something that's like a carcass of itself. And then they go, you know what? This is so overblown. Why do we ever do this anyway? This sucks. And they discard it.
Right.
And it's like you watch all of that unfold over and over and over again. And it comes to a point where you decide, you know what? I don't want you to know anything about what I'm doing.
Right.
Don't even look over here. Like, don't just, you're going to wreck it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that starts to become its own cycle.
Yeah.
That hurts everybody.
And you're all up into this other article that I just wrote that I told you about, because I talk about proscription and prescription of kind of proscription of Black bodies. And
Okay.
proscription meaning to regulate the use of,
Okay.
like whiteness tries to, and institutional racism tries to regulate the use of and regulate the freedom of Blackness, and then also prescribe certain ways that you can use your expressions or how you to operate in a certain way, or how much of your expression or subjectivity is allowed, and how can we make money off of that? How can we define that? That kind of thing.
Right, and there's the miles.
Right.
There's our segue into the miles. Because that's the thing that started our conversation about this album leading up to this recording, was talking about Miles Davis and the lyrics in the. I'm gonna start sharing my screen again. You thought we were done. Psych.
Oh, okay. No, I'm ready.
Okay, so let me. It's doing that thing where nope, that's the Zhora. Okay. Miles is over here. No, he's not. He's right there. Because Zhora and James, I feel like, are where my mindset at any given moment is oscillating between. The Zhora being the you'll never know everything and you couldn't know me, couldn't possibly, and James Baldwin being like, why don't you know this already?
Right.
That's me oscillating between those two.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Miles is like, I do this for me. I'm just cool. You could never, I do this in my sleep. You know, I don't do nothing for you,
Exactly. Literally, I do what I do, not for you.
Yeah.
Not for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is another one that she doesn't necessarily pull any specific quotes. It's a persona poem, I think is how I saw it.
Right. I don't know if you had a chance to watch the documentary.
I haven't. I meant to. I haven't.
Right. So there was a part of that I actually wrote about in the article, but it talked about, you probably know the history of minstrelsy and blackface. Mm-hmm. And that is a tradition where started with white people, trying to do caricatures of Black people, but then Black people started to do minstrel work. But and I'm not putting those Black people down. I'm saying it was like a proscription. This is it's the only way you're gonna be able to do anything. But then in the documentary they talked about how bebop got started, and Miles wasn't the originator. I mean, it was more people like Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker, but he came and played with them, and then they were talking about how one of the thoughts behind bebop was that we're gonna make a Black music for Black people, and we're not gonna shuck and jive and do it for white, we're doing it for us.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's the FUBU, for us by us.
Yeah.
Yes. 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 That's a great song too. A little bit of Solange.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I'm glad that we're sort of coming to that, because I think that I've been very intentional in setting this series up that we decenter whiteness,
Mm-hmm.
and I think even in a moment like this, or in a headspace like this, where a lot of the lyrics might make you think that this is about whiteness because of its intentional stance opposing it, it's really not.
Right.
This is for me. I'm saying you do you. I'm over here.
Right.
And that's not centering. That's intentional. That's subjectivity. That's positioning.
Right. That's like this is my personhood.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is separate from yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is an important distinction to make,
Right.
lest you try to assume that you understand what this is.
Well, yeah, it's twofold, right? It's like,
yeah,
one of them is a resistance, but blackness is not just a resistance to whiteness either.
Right. Yeah.
It's something unique and has ingenuity and creativity and its own meaning and relationship and that kind of thing.
Right, and that it predates slavery. Like that whole idea of not starting Black history with slavery.
Yeah, definitely.
Like recognizing that there was so much more before that. I'm thinking of did you watch when they redid Roots?
I didn't watch the revision. I need to check that out.
Yeah, I confess I didn't watch the back end of it, like the latter 2 episodes. I just watched the first 2. But what I appreciated is in the first episode in particular, they took great effort to show you the context of where someone like Kunta Kinte could have been and what sort of society might have existed. And what societies it might have been adjacent to. Like I think about in the original Roots, how you don't really see anything of their society, right? Like you see his familial relationships, but you don't see those in any sort of other social context, really.
Wow. Yeah.
But in the newer one, they tried to make that very clear. You see, and even in the like costume direction, you see lots of indigo, like you see all of this color, and you see like they talk about university and all of those historical things that were happening in Africa before slavery.
Wow.
And I so appreciated that they made that effort, to think about what his world would have
had to check that out.
Yeah. I mean, the rest of it is it's Roots. It's hard as hell to watch, but but that opening was really, I'm glad that I saw that, Yeah.
But talking about this Smiles,
yes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what's some of the lyrics that stand out to you here?
Standing out to me here. I mean, I like the idea of the I gave you the cool, I could do it in my sleep. Like this, it sort of ties back to what you were saying earlier about how so much of what we do is innate, or natural to us, and you can't fake that,
Right.
Yeah. I also love that I don't take requests.
Yeah, that to me is very particular. It's twofold. It's very particular to Miles, but it speaks towards, like that whole subjectivity of, this is who we are, not as a shadow of something else,
Yeah, and it makes me think too about some of the issues that we've like faced within our professional association with regards to people being like, well, you said not to bother you, so how are we supposed to learn? That those are requests. You're trying to make requests when I've been playing a whole friggin' set for you every other minute, like I'm just listen.
Yeah.
Just listen.
Yeah.
To what we've been saying.
Wow.
And that's in this too.
Yeah.
I just feel like this whole album is so just like, it's such an exquisite study, I feel like. Like so much intention went into every single track.
And the music is great.
Oh yeah. Oh, right. Like we didn't even talk about the music yet. Like that's actually my favorite part about, well, the whole album, yes, but as I was re-listening to it today, the Octavia track in particular, I feel like that's a place where you can really hear the intentionality of the music matching the aesthetic of Octavia Butler's work.
It's kind of futuristic.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just like every single piece has its own character, and Miles's piece does that too. You feel like you're hearing like echoes of Miles playing.
Right.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all the tracks have such unique character to them.
Yeah.
But it feels cohesive still, which is hard to do.
Very hard.
Like
I feel like enough people don't know about this album or pay enough attention to it.
Yeah, I stumbled upon it. I don't even remember how I got to know this album. I stumbled upon it. And then I was like, why has no one told me about this?
Yeah, it's honestly, lately I've been thinking, what are my favorite albums of a year? And so 2018, my favorite album, well, I do like J. Cole, of course, but
yes.
My actual favorite album is Swimming by Mac Miller of 2018.
All right.
And 2019, this album is my album of the year for me.
Yes, yeah. I see myself listening to this a lot more.
Yeah.
Like as time, like I think it's going to be one of those albums that's going to become like a go-to for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is funny because I was thinking about, just a title like Legacy makes you think all sorts of things, right? Like here, I'm gonna stop screen sharing again, but just that title makes you think of a lot of stuff. And so I was just thinking about how, like Spotify did that, your decade in music or your decade wrapped. Yeah. And mine got skewed by Mo's nap time playlist. So it was all India.
Well, that's what happens when you become a parent.
Right, exactly. But I wasn't mad at it. I was like, India Arie can be my artist of the decade. That's okay.
I like India. I really like her stuff before.
Yeah.
I feel like now it's become, instead of having a neo soul or R&B feel, it has like this inspirational.
Yeah, it's a little bit Iyanla Fix My Life.
Yeah.
Now. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm digging the old school India more than anything else. Yeah. But it's funny though to think about how like talk about how like being a parent makes weird things happen in your life, but just like musically, I think the types of music that drew me before Mo is different than post Mo. It's just like an anecdotal thought. Okay. Yeah, that I spend more time, I think, listening to and with intention to like legacy themed types of things. More like I've been listening to Angelique Kidjo's Cilia album. Have you listened to any of that?
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh my God. Okay, so Angelique Kidjo, first of all, are you familiar with Angelique Kidjo?
Nope.
Oh my God. So the first Angelique Kidjo song that I ever heard was a cover of Gimme Shelter.
Okay.
And she's from Benin in West Africa. So if you can imagine a cover, like a West African styled cover of the Rolling Stones, Gimme Shelter. Yeah. That was my introduction to her. But she's very much, her sort of style is like traditional West African.
Yeah.
Right? Like meets just like ballad singer songwriter. It's hard to really qualify her, but anyway, so her most the album that I've been listening to on repeat lately is tribute to Celia Cruz, and it's just called Celia. And so it's reimaginings of all these Celia Cruz songs, and with a very distinct like African borderline Afrobeat but not quite feel to them. And it's great stuff, but it just like, that's the type of stuff that I find myself drawn to, is like artists of today doing things that are reminiscent of the people who came before them and who were direct or indirect influences of them.
Yeah.
You know, like it's almost like in that Celia album that Angelique comes like full circle, like Africa to Cuba and back again.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You got me thinking about just people that I listen to throughout the diaspora or that have.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like folks in Australia that I listen to, but you know, I think there's a female rapper. Her name is Sampa the Great.
Ooh.
I think she's from, I don't get it wrong. She's from some country in I think West Africa, but immigrated to Australia.
Okay.
And then, I listen to people. There's a guy named Dreaming Now. He's got a song called Australia Does Not Exist, and that was my jam. He's like indigenous, you know, of the land, right?
Mm-hmm.
So talking about how this colonial project does not exist.
Yes, right. Yeah. This is what is that? Yeah. That's cool. I'll have to, so something I'll do like when I edit and post is I usually like to try and find like a picture of the album cover and be like, this is who we're talking about.
Right.
Just like slap it on there. And who knows, it might become a thing, because this happened with the last collab too, where we were talking about so many artists that I ended up actually building a playlist to listen to while I was editing.
Yeah.
And yeah, this maybe.
Let me name one more. Myra Andrade.
Ooh.
From Cape Verde.
Okay, tell me more.
Just her music is just, the performance of it is amazing. Her voice is amazing. The rhythmic feel of it. You know, it's not just her, but especially like a couple of her albums, you know, it's with live. You know, it's not really overproduced, but it's just different. It seems like different musicians you know, playing live. So yeah, I mean, it's good.
Yeah, I'll check
and
it out.
That was because it's in Portuguese. When I was doing my dissertation, of course, I couldn't study the music that was English. So that was my music when I was writing. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And I think maybe that's part of why I like having that Celia album in the background of everything, is because it's Spanish. I don't understand. Like, it's a great album just to have in the background. You don't get lost in the lyrics. Sometimes you want to listen to the lyrics, you know, but sometimes when you're trying to do stuff, but you want the comfort of hearing something, you just can't get sucked in.
Definitely.
Yeah. So to sort of tie all of this, so we've gone on this fabulous little journey of discussing subjectivity and discussing making the distinction between positioning oneself in a subjective way and centering, right? And we've sort of gone around to talking about music that's like feeding us and continues to feed us.
Right.
So I think the next logical or direction that would be valuable to go would be to talk about like why all of this matters. You know, like why not just why engage with this music, but why engage with it in this way, maybe. Yeah. In this sort of pick it apart, tease out the themes. Why engage with it like that?
Well, I'll talk about why it is for me.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's important to have models for like Black personhood and growth and development that are not behavioral based, that are not Euro dominant, that are not, I don't know. I think it's just, more, particularly for me, it starts with looking at a lens from a clinician and understanding, particularly related to, you know, adolescence and hip hop, but it's not limited to that. But particularly thinking about it that way is that there, especially in music therapy, there's been so much interpretation and definition of what hip hop and Blackness might mean from people who are not Black. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What does it mean to them?
Right.
For them.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, there and one of the things I talk about in this article I just finished is the exploring the worlds of Black clients, right?
Yes.
Exploring their cultural world, their musical world, the way they make meaning, their own self-definition. There's not a lot of explorations of that in music therapy.
Right. Yeah. Because we have that myth of objectivity.
Right.
You know, the idea that a study on adolescence is a study on adolescence, when it's like, but those are white adolescents.
Right. That listen, that may listen to a whole different type of music, or if they listen to rap, it's still, you know, it's not necessarily the same experience.
No.
Yeah.
They're consuming it in a very different way.
Right.
You know, and so I'm heartened to see more research out. And I say heartened like it's new. It's been around. Research on hip hop has been around. But I'm heartened to see more of it being referenced and utilized, you know, to sort of demonstrate how the way that hip hop culture and related tenets feed a community, the Black community specifically, is different than how it's junk food to everybody else.
True.
You know?
Yeah.
They don't know what they're tasting.
And then even sometimes when people can recognize power in hip hop, they still have this dichotomy of negative hip hop and positive hip hop, which I understand that there's a spectrum of risk versus empowerment. There's a you know, I understand that, but it's not a dichotomy either.
No. No. And people who view it as such and who wield it as such, almost in a way that weaponizes it, are doing a lot more harm than they think hip hop is. You know? Like, or than they say hip hop is.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's the why right there. Like, if you're gonna work with us, you need to understand how what you are consuming is more than what you think you're consuming.
Right.
And if you are us, you know, like members of the Black community engaging with hip hop, are you aware, you know, of all the nutrients in the, you know, do you know what's gone into this?
I think that's another aspect of it is, like you said, the positionality of Black people in the field, because I think we are separated from our culture by virtue of our academic training.
Yes.
We are disembodied in our experience of therapy and Black music. A lot of times, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, big time. And I'm trying to find ways to break that down. Like I'm really lucky in the position that I have right now, that it's a brand new bachelor's program, and that we can tailor a lot of things because we have the ease of literally we don't have seniors right now. Like the program just started a year and a half ago. So we've got sophomores. That's the highest, you know, and then we've got grad students, but I don't do anything with the grad students. So, but I'm able to sort of like tweak, you know, as things progress and lay some groundwork for, you know, our Black students coming up. Like, we're going to have this fishbowl opportunity, is sort of what we're calling it, for white students to go with the white faculty and have a little racial fishbowl conversation with all y'all white folks. And then the Black students and other racial minority students, we can sit down and talk about what we need as part of our academic training, you know? Like, I want to try to prevent that sort of severing, you know, or that disembodying. I want to be able to empower my minoritized students to bring their whole selves with them.
Yeah, and I struggle with that. And I wouldn't necessarily problematize our Black folks that's in the field, because we're all on a developmental journey and exploration. But I don't know. I'm just like, I'm hoping that there's more of just wanting to engage with music of our culture. If I just say, well, that's not who I work with, or that's not how I was trained, or that's what I do on the side, but not what I do in my job. Just these stuff,
How do you bring your whole self into the relationship? Even if that's not who you're working with, that's still part of who you are. How do you honor your whole musical self?
And we have to envision where we want to go too, not just where we are,
Yeah, where you want to be, like that. And that sort of ties to the whole, like, pulling myself out of the existentialness of this time, having to think about not just where I am in this precise moment, not just where I need to get by the end of next week when students start coming back virtually, but where do I want us to be 5-6 years from now? What do I imagine in terms of the impact of the work that I'm doing right now? Like, I was watching earlier today, I recently discovered this Netflix show, We Speak Dance. Which is, it only got one season, but it was a former UN staffer. I'm not sure exactly what her job was, but she's also a dancer. And so she just goes around the world, touring these countries through the eyes of a dancer and with the local dance community. And the first episode is in Lagos, Nigeria. And very specifically focused on the work of Fela Kuti. And there's a quote at one point of his that's like graffitied on a wall somewhere about how 5,000 years ago is 500 years from now. History is happening in the present moment, or something like that. But it just, I'm very aware of that now too.
History is happening in the present moment. So that behooves us to be intentional about what we want to happen, what we want to see happen, because we can shape history, right?
Yes, because we are.
Intentionality.
Yeah, because we are shaping history whether we intend to or not. So we might as well be intentional about it.
These are the things that I'm needing, because honestly, I assign students to read stuff. Undergraduate students don't like to read.
No, they don't.
But I'm like, how are you gonna know anything if you don't read? Like, you just gonna believe what I tell you? You like,
right? Eat your vegetables. Read the article. So that said, let's think ahead a little bit about what we want to do.
What if there's a combination of we do some on Soundtrap, and then we try to use that to do something live on top of it?
Right, that could be done. Do we want to just set a date?
What date works for you?
That's a good question.
I mean, I'm at home every day.
Same. It's an apocalypse outside, didn't you hear?
Yeah, I hesitate to recommend a router, but
yeah, because I will need this fixed. This can't be a thing. This cannot. So I was looking at the notes thing that we were both contributing to with the Toni Morrison idea.
Of course, like I said, I haven't read a lot of Toni Morrison books. They're on my list.
Mm-hmm.
But that concept of rememory really is something, and I guess I can kind of, I'm still having even thoughts about that we might even make up stuff in the moment, because there's this phenomenon that you're very well aware of, I'm sure, that like when stuff gets bad in the country, like you hear certain folks talk about, oh man, it's getting bad, or oh man, we have to resist, and there's this phenomenon of people that are marginalized, particularly Black people, like like, not to say it's been bad for us forever, but it's like we're okay.
Right? You just figured it out?
We can still operate. We're used to being upset and being happy at the same time.
Yes, yeah. Isn't that like a James Baldwin quote, that to be like conscious and Black in America is to be in a constant state of like low grade rage just all the time? Like we're the Hulk. I'm always angry.
But at the same time, people don't. I notice this most when we get into situations where we're talking about something that is a lightning rod to some people, like racism, or and then they're like, oh, this is uncomfortable. I'm like, and it's almost like, why, they sometimes they project and say, well, why are y'all angry all the time? We're like, we're not angry. Like, we can talk about this and be just fine.
This is our default. Like, right. This is what we have been dealing with for generations. Yeah. You just got here, clearly.
Like you said, I mean, I'm not to say we're not angry, but we're not angry to the point where we can't function.
Right, yeah, it's not debilitating. Like, I haven't watched like the season of American Horror Story that like immediately followed the election, apparently like played on this idea. Mm-hmm. I didn't see it, but I heard that it, like in the first episode, involved, a white woman just becoming absolutely hysterical. Right. At the realization that this is not my America, meanwhile, marginalized people everywhere are like, you didn't know.
So I guess that relates to Toni Morrison, because I think some people think that her work is just filled with suffering or filled
yes.
But it's like, I think she's even said that she's just showing different experiences within Blackness,
right? Yeah,
there is pain, there is suffering, but there's also joy that happens alongside that, and
and that all those stories deserve to be told, as well.
I, of course, I just added a little portion to the notes.
That was pretty fire, though. That little bit.
I listened on YouTube to her Pulitzer Prize speech. And she had this whole analogy of some young people took a bird and it was in their hands, and I think the bird was dead. And then they asked this old woman, I believe who was blind, about the bird, and they were trying to really like fool the old woman or get her say, I don't know what, but she used that whole analogy to talk about language and what the bird represents, and how language can be freeing, or it can be oppressive, or it can be containing, or what have you.
Because the opening passage that I put in there was just all about that interview that I mentioned is at the very beginning of that, well, not the very beginning, but towards the beginning of the pieces I am. Let me see if I can make this, oh, hi. There we go, that's bigger. But so she talks in that opening about how, like, the first time she realized that words had power, she was like scribbling words on the sidewalk with a friend, and she just started writing this word that made her mother come running out of the house and stop her, and so that was sort of where I felt like beginning, but I feel like that's a nice segue into what you were just talking about, that those, like the phrase I use, the darkest, meanest, nothing to see here, leave here, don't listen to that, those words, the things they tell us not to talk about, or the things that they say that's too uncomfortable to talk about. Those are the places where Toni was like, I'm going to talk about that, where there's really, I don't know that there's anybody else who wrote the way she did.
Yeah.
You know, like she had a lot of contemporaries and people who are still writing stories in a very similar vein, but nobody wrote like Toni.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really like I mean, I have to look at all these, but the hook, the memory won't let me go.
Yeah.
But I don't want it to. I don't want it to. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that, because I was reflecting on what you said about how you don't always want to just hear messages of hope and resilience all the time, you know?
Right.
Like sometimes you just want to be able to sit and acknowledge suffering, you know, and acknowledge this sucks.
Yeah.
Like this right here.
Yeah, and that thought was really from a Christian lens of it's almost like, oh, this, you know, people kind of critique a prosperity kind of messaging where it's all let's move ahead, we're faith for miracles, and I think there's something to be said for believing. I understand why people need to believe for the impossible, and I think there's something to be said for the part of relating to God and faith that, you know, it's just, I'm need to be comforted, you know, blessed are those who mourn, they will be comforted, you know?
Yeah. Like you want to be able to have that moment to acknowledge I am in the wilderness, you know? Yeah.
All right, let's see.
I tried it once, my mother stopped me from writing the words she didn't want to see. This is the way we don't move, because this ain't been written. This sweet memory won't let me go. Well, I don't want it to. I don't want it to. This sweet memory won't let me go. Well, I don't want it to. I don't want it to. Life is heavy, but I need my words to hold weight. It broke the levees, but the culture holds steady. We hold the pain, and our bodies keep the score. Pours down the drain, still we keep our eyes forward. This sweet memory won't let me go. But I don't want it to. I don't want it to. This sweet memory won't let me go. But I don't want it to. I don't want it to. This sweet memory won't let me go. But I don't want it to. I don't want it to. This sweet memory won't let me go. But I don't want it to. I don't want it to.
The bird in the hand is language that stands for freedom or for oppression. Once the truth is made, manifest, believe us, we can fly new direction.
thank you all for watching this episode, this collaboration between myself and Hakeem Leonard. I hope that you enjoyed our conversation and the work that came out of our collaboration. As I mentioned, my patrons will get a downloadable copy of the song that Hakeem and I put together, and you'll be able to find it in the general public out on Hakeem's SoundCloud page. I'll make sure to drop that link for you all right here. And stay tuned. There's more to come from Black Creative Healing, more possible changes as the summer rolls in and we see what the state of the world is. But I'm really heartened by the response by creatives during this time in terms of our ability to lift each other up, to support each other, to just hold space for each other. I think holding space is going to continue to be something that we all need. And I hope that in this time, wherever you are, that you are finding space for yourself and that you are finding support, and that support is finding you, that you aren't having to do all that work alone. Anyway, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next episode.